Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another missing persons video. Thank you so much for the amazing feedback on my last two missing person videos. If you did miss them, I will link them down below. And if you've got any missing persons video requests, please leave them down below. I really find researching these cases so interesting, and I think getting missing persons cases out there in the public eye is so imperative in actually solving these cases. Okay, so today's video is on Asha Degree. Now this case is incredibly frustrating, as many missing person cases can be, but this one just seems to have some very weird facts and very little evidence and no explanation behind anything. Basically any theory can make sense in this case due to the lack of evidence. So Asha Degree was born on August 5th, 1990 in Shelby, North Carolina, which means she would be turning 28 this year. Her parents were Harold and Iquilla. I'm sorry if I am pronouncing the name Iquilla wrong. I will put the spelling down below. They were married on Valentine's Day, so they were married in 1988. Asha had a brother named O'Brien, and Asha and her brother were raised by her parents in an apartment in the subdivision of North Shelby, North Carolina. According to reports, Asha and her brother had a very sheltered upbringing. They didn't have too many social activities outside of school and church, and of course family. The children also weren't allowed to watch a great deal of television, and they weren't allowed to watch the news as the family considered it negative and sad. The family also did not own a computer. In a 2013 interview with Jet magazine, Iquilla, Asha's mum, was stated as saying, "Every time you turn on the TV, there is some pedophile who has lured somebody's child away via the internet." So clearly Asha's parents didn't, trust the outside world, didn't want their children being raised in a society that they believed to be bad or negative. They wanted their children to have a happy upbringing, basically, which is fair enough, and a more pure upbringing. So by February 2000, Asha was 9 years old and a 4th grade student at Fulston Elementary School. She was described by many as a girl that was very polite, but also very timid, especially in social situations. Her mum also described her as a very cautious girl who was shy, but also content to stay within the limits that her parents had set for her and her brother. So now I'm going to go a bit into the lead up to Asha's disappearance. So on Saturday, February the 12th, both Asha and her brother had basketball games at Burns Middle School when Asha was first. So Asha played the position of point guard and was considered by many as the star of her team. Unfortunately, Asha would be fouled during the game and her team would go on to have the first loss of the season. Asha's parents did state that Asha was visibly upset over her performance during the game, and following the loss, her and her teammates were upset and did have a bit of a cry. Asha also reportedly told her parents that she injured her leg during the game, and Asha's mother consulted her, telling her she would be fine. It was thought by Asha's parents that she took the responsibility of the loss of the game to heart, which was why she was so upset, but as her brother's game was next, O'Brien, she went to go watch his game, and by the end of that game, she was in better spirits again. She was seen later that night joking, laughing and playing with teammates, so she did recover and feel a little bit better after her initial loss that day. On February the 13th, so one day before Asha disappeared, she was said to be in good spirits, in a good mood, and was happy to receive some Valentine's Day candy from her grandmother Joanne. On that day also, storms were actually rolling over where Asha lived, and the storm was due to hit that, I believe, afternoon, evening, night, and the storm was actually responsible for a car crash that did happen that evening, and that did cause a power outage in the neighbourhood. Now, I couldn't find a specific time the power went out, but it was reported that between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. they lost power in their neighbourhood. However, Aisha's mum reported that by 8 p.m. that night, Aisha and her brother O'Brien were in bed. Aisha's dad Harold was also working on this day at his second job and did not get home until 12:30 a.m. that night. When Harold got home, he checked on both Aisha and O'Brien, who both slept in the same room, and they were both fast asleep. And as Harold usually would, he stayed up after a late shift and watched a little bit of television. Harold reportedly went to bed at 2:30 a.m. that night. He did check on his children once more, and they were both fast asleep in their bed, and then he went to sleep. This unfortunately would be the last time that he saw Aisha. Shortly after Harold went to bed, O'Brien claims he heard Aisha moving around in her bed. When he turned to look to see what was happening, Aisha was standing on her bed in her nightgown, but then she just went to the toilet and came back to bed, so he didn't think much of it. A short time later, O'Brien once again hears movement in Aisha's bed and reportedly heard the springs of her bed squeaking, but just believed that Aisha was once again moving around in her bed and didn't look to see what was happening. He pretty much just went straight back to sleep. The next morning, on February the 14th, Iquilla wakes up at 5:45 a.m, which is earlier than usual for their family because she claimed that their power had gone out quite early the evening before, therefore the kids could not have a bath. So she got them up earlier so they could have their bath in the morning before school. Now, as I stated earlier, February 14th was not only Valentine's Day, but it was Harold and Iquilla's wedding anniversary. When Iquilla goes to wake up the children, O'Brien is sound asleep in his bed and Aisha is not there. However, at first, of course, she's not concerned, just assuming Aisha has gotten up a little bit early and is somewhere in the house. After Iquilla cannot find Aisha anywhere in the house, she does begin to panic a little bit and goes to wake up Harold to tell him what is going on, and they ring Aisha's mother, Joanne. Now, Joanne is Harold's mum, and she actually lives down the road from Aisha and her family, so they thought there was a possibility she may have gone down there to see her grandma. However, when they spoke to Joanne, Aisha was not there. Iquilla then calls her mum panicked, telling her what is happening, and her mum tells her to call the police immediately. So Iquilla calls the police after that, and by 6:40 p.m, the police are at Aisha's house. When police arrive, they do have search dogs with them. However, they were not able to pick up on Aisha's scent whatsoever, and it was initially said that the rain potentially washed away any trace of Aisha. However, it was not actually the rain that made it harder to trace Aisha for the dogs. It would have been the strong winds that happened to have happened that night of the storm, and they would have basically carried any evidence of Aisha being there, and that would have confused the dogs. You can look up a bit more about like how that works, but hopefully that makes sense. But basically, because her scent was now sort of scattered, wherever she had been, the dogs could not pick up any clear indication of exactly where she had been that morning. While police continued to search their house and the neighbourhood with the sniffer dogs for Aisha, Harold, Iquilla and O'Brien searched the neighbourhood, knocking door to door and shouting out Aisha's name. Some neighbours even joined the search to help out the family, and eventually friends and family of Aisha's did join the search once they started finding out what was happening. Police found absolutely no signs of forced entry. In fact, every door and window in the house was locked. Eventually, police started searching further out from the house, but again, they found nothing. There was only one small piece of evidence found, which was a mitten, which was initially thought to be Aisha's. However, her mother did confirm that in fact that was not Aisha's mitten. Investigators did eventually figure out that Aisha's backpack was missing, along with a few items of clothing. This and the fact that the house had no signs of forced entry pointed them to the idea that Aisha had left off her own accord and basically just locked the door behind her. Police believed that this was a very planned out runaway case and that Aisha had potentially packed her bag days before she had actually run away. That and the fact that O'Brien had heard Aisha stirring a few times the morning of her disappearance. Aisha's parents, however, do not believe this theory. Aisha was incredibly scared of dogs and would not go out on her own. Also, the fact that she'd had a very sheltered upbringing meant she was not the type of girl to just get up and run away. By the evening of February the 14th, the media was heavily covering Asha's story, and Iquilla made a public plea for anyone to bring her baby home. As a result of this heavy media coverage, several witnesses actually did come forward claiming they had seen Asha on the morning of her disappearance. 2 witnesses claim they saw Asha walking along Highway 18 that morning, and Highway 18 actually leads to Asha's school, so this may have been a path that she was familiar with. The first witness was a truck driver who claimed they saw Asha walking along Highway 18 between 3:30 a.m. and 4:15 a.m. that morning on the south side. If this person was indeed Asha Degree, it is said that she was possibly following Highway 18 into town, but for unknown reasons, as this also did lead to the main part of town. Now, as I did mention, it was storming that night, and on top of that, it was very windy and very, very cold. So if she had indeed planned to run away, surely she would potentially think to put it off another night considering the weather. And I just don't see a 9-year-old girl deciding to leave the house under those circumstances in that weather. But I will get into theories later on. The 2 witnesses also claim Asha was wearing a backpack and a long-sleeved white shirt, and these 2 items were missing from Asha's home. Police do believe these sightings were of Asha Degree due to this information. And if these 2 witnesses are indeed correct, Asha was in no way, shape or form dressed appropriately for the weather that morning. In fact, according to police reports, all she'd packed in her backpack that was missing from her home was a pair of pants, a pair of sneakers, a pocketbook, and of course the backpack itself. One of the witnesses, quite concerned with what he saw, a young girl walking down Highway 18 in basically the middle of the night, actually turned around to double check what he had seen, and it took him several goes of turning around to see Asha again, if indeed that was Asha, just due to the fact it was raining and dark, but he did eventually spot her again. When he did spot her, he actually called out to her, but this did appear to frighten her and she did run off into the woods. This sighting was also approximately 1.3 miles south of her home, near the junction of Highway 18 and Highway 180. This was also the last confirmed sighting of Asha Degree. On February the 17th, now 3 days after Asha disappeared, police finally find some more evidence. Along Highway 18, just off the place where Asha was last seen, is a shed that's owned by Turner's Upholstery. The shed's located down a long dirt driveway, and it's just filled with furniture and all sorts of bits and pieces. Debbie Turner, who was the owner of the business, actually found several items outside of the shed but didn't think anything of it and didn't connect it to Asha's case until police showed up and told her the story. The items were a green marker, a pencil, and a Mickey Mouse hair bow. Police immediately began searching the area surrounding the shed for any further evidence that Asha had been there. Candy wrappers were actually discovered in the area, and these were confirmed to be Asha's by her basketball teammates, who confirmed they received Valentines candy that was just like the candy wrappers that police had found. Police found several more candy wrappers along the stretch of Highway 18 where Asha was last seen by witnesses, and they even brought in sniffer dogs again, however nothing was discovered. There was no signs of struggle in or around the shed, and no other evidence that Asha had been in or near that shed except for the evidence Debbie Turner had found of the hair bow, the pencil, and the marker. After 9,000 man hours and 1 week of searching for Asha, the foot search was called off for her. Nothing more was discovered during this time period. In March of that same year, the police decided to investigate Harold and Iquilla. Although neither the public nor the police suspected her parents, they had no other leads or suspects. They both agreed to do a polygraph test, and it's confirmed that Harold definitely did pass the polygraph test. However, I couldn't find any information on Iquilla's polygraph test, but I do assume that she did pass the polygraph test considering that they are no longer suspects. Also in March, Sheriff Dan Crawford made a public statement in relation to Asha Degree's case and the possibility of foul play. He stated, "Investigators have reason to believe that there may be individuals who have information pertinent to this investigation that for some unknown reasons have yet to come forward with this said information. There is a strong belief that foul play is involved in Asha Degree's disappearance." When asked about possible suspects, Crawford replied, "There are active leads involving individuals that we are pursuing." So now police had gone from believing Asha was a runaway to believing there was possible foul play involved in the case. Even some of Asha's young friends were interviewed by police for possible leads or suspects, but unfortunately nothing came of this. Over the next 18 months, the Degree family made several public pleas, as well as appearing on the Montel Williams Show, America's Most Wanted, and the Oprah Winfrey Show. Police did continue to receive daily tips, however, nothing did come of any of this. It would not be until August 3rd, 2001, where another piece of evidence would be discovered, and that was Asha's backpack. Now, I think this is a piece of evidence that really throws a spanner in the works of this case, because nothing about it makes sense. Her backpack was discovered along Highway 18, however, it was 26 miles north of the shed that police were originally investigating. So just let that 26 miles sink in for a minute. So although witnesses that did potentially see Asha said that she was travelling north, 26 miles is a long way for a young 9-year-old girl to be travelling on foot. Unless, of course, she didn't get there by travelling on foot, or she didn't place her backpack there. So Terry Fleming was a 44-year-old contractor that was clearing a lot in the Laurel Fork area to make way for a house when he discovered a black bin bag. Terry looked inside the black plastic bin bag to discover another black plastic bin bag. He opened this one up again and he discovered a backpack. Also found close to the backpack were a pair of men's khaki shorts and several animal bones, although these pieces of evidence haven't proven to be any help or relation to Asha's case. When Terry opened the backpack, he found a piece of paper with Asha's name and phone number on it. However, initially he didn't think anything of it and hadn't heard of Asha's case. The next morning he was feeling a little uneasy about the backpack find and was telling his wife about it. His wife, however, was familiar with Asha Degree's case and they called police immediately. Police then, of course, combed through the area in which the backpack was found, but they found nothing. Police never did officially release a statement telling the public what was in the backpack. It is claimed in some articles that photos of her family and a baseball uniform was found in the backpack, but this information is unconfirmed, so just take it with a grain of salt, basically. Unfortunately, the backpack was also the last piece of evidence to ever be found in Asha Degree's case. Police did, however, find the discovery of the backpack as solid evidence of foul play. However, the discovery did confuse police and the public due to the nature in which it was found, and it's confused me as well greatly. If Asha was abducted, why would they not burn her bag, chuck it in the river, or just throw it in the bin? Why would it be found in the manner that it was found? It's been wrapped into plastic bags and buried as though someone's trying to preserve the evidence, whether that was Asha or someone else. And to me, I'll go into theories shortly, as I said, but if she was abducted or something's happened to her, it's as though someone might be feeling guilty about what happened, therefore they wanted this evidence to eventually be found, but it's a very strange situation. Unfortunately, it has never been solved as to why the backpack was placed there, how it got there, and why it was placed in such a manner. The Asha Degree case has unfortunately pretty much been cold since this last piece of evidence was found. The police do continue to receive tips on the possible whereabouts of Asha or her remains, but again, nothing has come of this. In 2004, however, a tip did come in from the county jail that police did take seriously enough to investigate. Police blocked off and dug up an intersection of Shelby and Rube Spangler roads in Lawndale, South Carolina. Again, nothing was found, and once again the Asha Degree case would remain cold for several more years. In 2015, the FBI announced they were re-examining Asha Degree's case along with Cleveland County Sheriff's officer investigators and State Bureau of Investigation agents. A $25,000 offer was rewarded to anyone that brought forward information that would lead to an arrest in Asha's case, and a further $20,000 was raised, bringing the total to $45,000. So Shelley Lynch, who's a public affairs specialist with the Charlotte office of the FBI, has stated, "We are going over every aspect of this case and re-interviewing people. We are making sure there is no evidence that could still be tested. This is a case we have actively been working on for 17 years. The re-evaluation of Asha's case, however, would initially bring forward no new evidence or leads. However, in May 2016, a fairly controversial piece of new evidence and information was brought forward to the public, which was the first piece of evidence they'd had since the backpack. A witness came forward claiming to have seen Asha on the morning of her disappearance getting into a car. She was getting into a dark green car along Highway 18, which was of course the last place she was seen, and the car is thought to have either been a late 70s Ford Thunderbird or a Lincoln Mark IV. Police did attempt to track down every vehicle that was similar to the one described by the witness that was registered at the time that Asha disappeared. However, unfortunately, they were not able to track it down. There is actually one suspect in the Asha Degree case. However, there's nothing directly linking this individual to Asha, but he has been convicted of murder and of the rape and murder of a young girl around the time of Asha's disappearance, and in Asha's area, which makes him a prime suspect. So Donald Preston Ferguson was arrested and charged with the sexual assault and murder of Shalonda Poole, who was just 7 years old. Shalonda's murder happened in North Carolina in 1990. It turned out Donald Preston Ferguson not only knew Shalonda, but actually helped in the search when she went missing. And in 1991, he was also charged with the sexual assault of a 10-year-old girl. He was sentenced to 8 years but released in 1997. He was also arrested for a 1989 sexual assault and was arrested for the murder of his grandmother. However, this case was later dropped due to lack of evidence. Around the time of Asha's disappearance, there is unfortunately very little known about the whereabouts of Ferguson. However, he's very well known for basically drugs, fraud and scams in the North Carolina area. Ferguson was also said to be homeless around this time. And there is also quite a few physical similarities between Shalonda and Asha. They were both African American girls with similar hairstyles and big smiles, and they were of course both females around the same age. However, as of right now, nothing is directly linking him to Asha's disappearance. So since the re-examining of the case that started in 2015, they've conducted 300 interviews and meet several times a month to go over the latest on the investigation. Sheriff Alan Norman, who's involved in the case, stated, "Even though it has been 18 years since Asha disappeared, this is not a cold case sitting on a shelf. We are actively investigating, following leads, generating new ones, conducting interviews and utilising new advancements in technology that didn't exist before." And the $45,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest in Asha's case is still on offer. So if you do have any information, do come forward. I will leave more details down below as to who you can contact if you do know anything. So there are so many theories in this case, and because of the lack of evidence, and what evidence there is just doesn't make sense. So many theories make sense, and at the same time so many don't make sense. So it's really hard to eliminate any of them basically. You can't really say that any theory is too far-fetched or ridiculous because we're going off very little. So I'm going to go over a few of the theories now. Some I've seen online, some I've thought about myself. Some of them are very short, some of them are a bit longer. So let's start with sleepwalking. So basically there's a theory that she got up and slept walked, which you'd think is far-fetched, but as I said, nothing seems too far-fetched in this case right now. She could potentially have got up, got dressed, got a backpack and walked out the front door, locking it behind her, walked down Highway 18 and met with the wrong person, met foul play basically. I don't know what the chances are, but I mean it's not out of the question in the end. The next theory is that she was inspired by a book she had just read called The Whipping Boy, which was about some young children going on an adventure, and potentially she was inspired to go on her own adventure, so she just decided to get up and leave one morning. This one doesn't make that much sense to me. She may have also been upset after losing her basketball game and possibly walked into a school early to practice playing, but as I stated, or as it's been reported, she lived a sheltered life. She was quite timid. She was a well-behaved young girl. She was afraid of dogs, didn't like the rain and the storms. So likely she would have got up to leave on her own accord, but not impossible, because I mean, how did, it's such a hard case. Like, how she must have left of her own accord because there's no signs of break and enter, but then I believe she's met with foul play in the process. It's just a case of what reason she would have left. Because she's 9, you know. There's a million reasons why she may have left. She may have not been upset. She may have been. I've read theories that, you know, she was planning a surprise for her parents' wedding anniversary for Valentine's Day. Maybe she was meeting someone for a date, although I think she's a bit young for that. And she met with the wrong person. I think maybe the intent didn't start out bad, but obviously has ended in a bad way. And as I mentioned before, her choice of clothing was not appropriate for the weather at all. It was freezing cold, it was raining, it was windy, and she just had on a long-sleeved white shirt and a backpack with very few items in it. And the backpack does suggest, I guess, running away, because if she was abducted, I can't imagine they would be like, we'll just wait until you've packed a backpack and then we're going to abduct you. So the backpack does give me an indication that she, for some reason, we may never know, she got up and left. Another theory I've seen floating around online is that if she did leave off her own accord, and maybe something just as innocent as to walk into school or to town, to do something to get to school early, etc., not as a sheltered young girl, not actually realising that there's dangers in the world. So she doesn't watch the news, doesn't have a computer, so she doesn't realise that there's murderers and rapists out there. Therefore, she's probably a trusting girl. As shy, as scared as she might be, if she was determined to do something or meet someone, she may have very well left. However, there's a theory that when she was walking down Highway 18, potentially she was hit by a car and killed, and that person just disposed of her body as to not be blamed, go to jail, anything along those lines, and they actually, out of guilt, just preserved her backpack. However, I don't know how she would have walked the 26 miles where her bag was found. And that's another piece of the puzzle that doesn't make any sense. So, as I said, why would Asha put her own backpack into black plastic bin bags and bury it if she was the one running away? I 100% believe that that backpack was put there by someone else, and someone that may have felt guilty. If potentially could have been a family member involved in something, but either way, someone has put that there out of guilt, I believe, and that sort of adds up in the theory that potentially she was hit by a car and that it was an accident. I also don't believe Asha could have travelled 26 miles on foot as a 9-year-old, and B, even if she did, surely someone would have seen her traveling, because that would have taken a long time for a little 9-year-old girl to travel that far. There's no way nobody, not one person, would have seen her. So I think it's more than possible that she got into a car with someone that maybe that she trusted, or she was abducted. But then you've got to think about the scenario and what are the chances of the day she decides to leave to do whatever she planned to do, that there is a child abductor that just happens to see her. I mean, it could have been an opportunist or a crazy person. It's just bad luck to meet with foul play in that circumstance. Again, if she was meeting up with someone that she knew or trusted, this may have helped her to overcome her fear of the weather or dogs. And unfortunately, a lot of murders do happen by someone that the victim is familiar with. So that's again another theory. Also, the fact that investigators have not told us what was found in her backpack does lead me to believe there may have been some crucial evidence that we are not being informed of, which is fair enough in this type of investigation, but that may mean we are missing a vital piece of this puzzle. So frustratingly, all of these theories make sense, and yet absolutely none of them do. Some of them seem so far-fetched, but they could have happened. It's just, this case is incredibly frustrating for me, and I really hope the fact that they are working on the case today, still actively, means that we will have answers soon. Anyway, if you found this video interesting, don't forget to give it a like, comment down below your theories, and subscribe and hit that notification bell, and of course share these videos. That is the most important thing, is to share these cases. We have this amazing platform, so let's use it. I will talk to you guys in the next video. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you soon.
Close all the curtains.